Okay, everyone, I want you to know if you're watching on Zoom, it looks like I'm sitting in Kuala Lumpur, but I'm not. I'm doing it in honor of our esteemed guest today. We're talking to Harvard-trained Oxford researcher, Professor Gerry Bodeker. It's Bodeker, Gerry, not Bodeker, right?
It can be either. The correct German pronunciation is Bodeker,
See there?
and the anglicized version is Bodeker. So take your pick.
Take your pick. Well, my Germanic roots told me to say Bodeker. So there you go. Now,
You're right.
am I right that you have written 6 books or 8 books? How many is it?
10.
Oh, my goodness. I read an old bio. Only 10 books. Would you please be a little more, goal-oriented, Gerry? Now, we should tell the listeners where we met. It's such a great memory for me. It was at GWS Morocco under the Casbah tent on the gala evening. We were transformed to rock the Casbah. And I mean, weren't there Arabian horses dancing in the center ring, right?
Yes, there were, with riders doing amazing gymnastics on the horseback.
On the horses. And if you went to the restroom, you saw women grinding argan oil from are they nuts? Is that what they did to get the oil pressed?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And I was with the wonderful Lisa Starr, who travels everywhere, speaks everywhere, and she came to your table. And I saw you in a white linen suit, and I was like, is this a character from a Graham Greene novel? And she talked about having lunch with you in Kuala Lumpur, which sounds like the most exotic place. So that was 2014, Gerry. But since then, I do know that you have been chairing the Mental Wellness Initiative, right? For Global Wellness Institute.
Yes, the Global Wellness Institute. Yes, that's right, Kim. Yeah.
And how many years has that been going on?
Well, we founded it in 2016. It started with Susie and I having a phone conversation. And I said to Susie, look, for the upcoming summit in Kitzbühel, you might want to have some focus on a whole lot of new research that's coming out that's showing a scientific basis for wellness pathways enhancing mental health and well-being. So she said, let's talk about it. So we did on the phone. And she said, I think you should give a presentation. And I said, well, why don't we just repeat this conversation on stage instead of me giving a lecture? And that's what we did. And then we got a standing ovation that went on and on and on. And so I just said, once the noise had, the applause had gone down a bit, I said, look, if that's the response from this distinguished gathering, then let's right now declare that we will create a mental wellness initiative and produce a white paper pulling all of this together. And anyone who's interested, please meet me, at the bottom of the stage when we're done. So that's how it started. And we've done the white paper, and that led to a chapter in the Oxford Encyclopedia of Public Health entitled Wellbeing and Mental Wellness. And it was the first entry into the academic literature of well-being and mental wellness in the Oxford Encyclopedia of Public Health. So
that was 2016. Look how far the conversation about mental wellness has come. And so you're a leading expert in that field, but also today what we're going to talk about is TAIM, Traditional Arabic and Islamic Wellness. And this was so fascinating to me. I think Gerry, one thing I wanted to share with you is, I feel like I've been exposed to the wellness world. I've been around it almost 30 years. And in researching for this episode, I was gobsmacked to see that just like the paintings I saw in Istanbul when I visited, it was like the founding fathers of the US coming to visit the leaders of the Islamic and, Oriental world to get their wisdom to start a new country. And then I read where not just traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, which we've been talking about for probably 15 years now, but would you say Islamic medicine or Arabic medicine is older than that?
Well, first of all, Arabic medicine is also sometimes referred to as Greco-Arabic medicine because the physician who pulled a lot of existing knowledge together in around, I think it was the 12th century, Ibn Sina, Latinized as Avicenna in his Canon of Medicine, drew a lot on Greek medical theory, but he also included Middle Eastern traditional practices. And of course, humans have used plants and minerals and indeed animals as medicine for as long as humanity's been around. And a clue to this is found in the opening section of the main text of Ayurveda, the Charaka Samhita, where Charaka says to his students, if you don't know a medicine for a particular condition, go and talk to the tribal people, the indigenous communities, because they observe the animals and they learn from what the animals treat themselves with. So this has been going on really since the beginning of humanity, and every region has harnessed the flora and fauna of that region for their health, for their nutrition, but also for medicinal and well-being and energetic purposes. So it's no surprise that a lot of the material that Ibn Sina included in the canon of medicine from Middle Eastern regions is time-honored practice for those cultures.
But also, I read where in the 12th century, European scholars studied the works of Arab traditionalists, and they became translated into Latin. They became the predominant principles of teaching in medical schools in Europe in the 12th century.
You've done your homework well. That
It's
is exactly
crazy.
what happened. Yes. So the Arabic texts, Arabic medicine, particularly as compiled by Ibn Sina, was the standard of medicine in the West. Not in the East, of course, because Ayurveda and Chinese medicine had their own standards, and Southeast Asia really drew on both traditions according to which part of Southeast Asia. But in the West, Arabic medicine was the standard, and it was the curriculum for training doctors in Europe.
I'm sorry, but that is so profound. Avicenna, is that how you say his name? The father of modern medicine, he's called, lived between 980 and 1037 AD. And what he's quoted as saying in your research report from 2015 is absence of understanding does not mean absence of existence. So just because I didn't know that was true doesn't mean it wasn't true.
It also means, as he's saying to his students, if you don't understand a condition, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. There's something going on there and we have to find it out. And so, Kim, one of the things that's really interesting about Arabic medicine is that it has a theory of elements. Now, when I first heard about this, I heard it through a great master of Greco-Arabic medicine, or Unani medicine, as it's called in South Asia, the late Professor Hakim Muhammad Saeed, who was a dear and greatly respected friend of mine. And he was talking about elements. Now, I hadn't heard anything about elements ever before, and I thought, what's he talking about? Is it like the elemental table, the periodic table with iron and copper and zinc and lead and etc.? And no, that is not what he was talking about. What he was talking about was something that shows the profundity of this tradition and of the Greek medicine that it drew on, and of the indeed Ayurvedic medicine that influenced Greek medicine, and that is the physics of physiology. We've all heard, those of us who are familiar with Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, about prana and qi.
Sure.
Those are local characterizations of energy, the physics of biology. In Western science always begins with physics.
I don't know why I have to feel like writing down everything you're saying, Gerry. I feel like I'm in a lecture in college and I have to learn those. So, Gerry, once again, would you define for us the physics of biology? What were you saying?
Yes, Kim. In Western science, science always starts with physics. That's the most fundamental level of knowledge we have about how the universe works. In Western medicine, science does not start with physics. It starts with chemistry and biochemistry, which is a level up from physics. But in non-Western medicine, medical science starts with physics. What are the energetic principles that govern the construction and change and development of physiology? What is the physics driving this? And so that is the theory of the 4 elements of Arabic medicine. They are sort of metaphorically described as earth, fire, water, and air. But let's look at those medically. Earth is structure. It is carbon. That is what we're made of. Fire is thermoregulation. The body heating and cooling, elevated temperature in the gut is critical for effective digestion.
Mm-hmm.
Water is also what we're largely made of.
Yeah.
That's well known about the body. And air is movement. So it's our breath in and out. It's the beating of our heart. It's the circulation of our blood. It's even the activity of our brain and the thought processes. So it's movement. These are very, very fundamental principles. Structure, the carbon that we're made of, and movement and thermoregulation. These are elements that underlie organ systems, systems such as the immune system, the microbiome, and so on. They're all deeper level influences. And the view in physics and the view in, we could call it biophysics in this case, is that if you change the energy levels or the energy interactions or the energetic foundations of a body, then everything else sort of realigns. So the idea is to start with anything that's going to rebalance those underlying energy systems.
So you could say when someone said, oh, earth, fire, water, air, oh, you're getting a little woo-woo on me. No, you're getting as real as it gets. So
Yeah.
Gerry, tell me, what are some of the all-encompassing elements of TAIM? I know one thing that you made me, when I read it, I was like, what? Equestrian exercises and martial arts? Tell me.
All traditional health systems. I prefer to call them health systems rather than medical systems because medicine is only part of the story. They all have the elements that we know are basic for enhancing longevity and quality of life. And that includes exercise and movement. It includes nutrition. It includes rest, stress management. It includes social interactions, connectedness, etc. So these are, of course, all present in Arabic medicine and also in Islamic medicine. And I want to distinguish between the two here. Islamic medicine, sometimes referred to as medicine of the Prophet, is really referring to health and medical knowledge found in the Quran and also in the Hadith, which is the recordings of the sayings of Prophet Muhammad. And there are references there to, for instance, black seed oil or the black seed, Nigella sativa.
Right.
Huge amount of research on Nigella sativa, and it's found to be an immunomodulator to improve metabolic syndrome, which is heart disease, to reduce inflammation, etc. And what the Prophet Muhammad is quoted as saying is this black seed will cure anything but death.
I read that. Now that's quite the statement, isn't it?
So it's like saying this is a superfood, this is a super medicine,
Mm.
and everyone should know this. There's also mention of honey, which is anti-inflammatory, which enhances immune functioning, is antimicrobial, balances intestinal flora, hence enhances the gut microbiome. This is all medicinal advice coming through the sacred texts and the recorded sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. Dates also. So what we need to also understand is that Islamic medicine is built around the 5 pillars of Islam, and they include prayer 5 times a day and fasting. Now, prayer 5 times a day, Islamic prayer isn't sitting still quietly. Islamic prayer is movement. It's going
down, up.
There have been parallels made to the physiology of the yoga movement of sun salutation.
Mm-hmm.
And it has similar benefits. So the health benefits of just the motion activities of Islamic prayer are increased balance in older people, hence reduced risk of falling, and overall flexibility.
I mean, let's face it, because the sitting is the killer, right? But you can't sit in Islamic prayer. It is really bending down. And let's not forget the sound. That's a beautiful thing to vibrate in your chest. I was staying in Istanbul, I mentioned, and I remember waking up at so early in the morning, 4:30 or 5. And I was like, what is that? I keep my windows open. This was my first time. It was so beautiful. And, you hear it throughout the day. So that has to make the heart feel good.
That's right. Correct. And then fasting for 4 weeks or one lunar month every year. And it's just fasting from sunrise to sunset. And that, of course, we all know in the wellness world that fasting is a way of detoxifying. It's a way of resetting the microbiome. It's a way of losing weight, of course. Yep. There are many medical benefits of fasting.
Intermittent fasting. In the West, intermittent fasting is all the rage right now, right?
Absolutely. That's right. That's right. So even encoded into the core pillars, the 5 pillars of Islam, there are health principles. One of the principles is called zakat, which is giving a percentage of your income regularly for the poor. And there's a system set up for contributing through zakat. We know the research on generosity shows that it contributes to mental health and well-being. That being generous is far better for health than pampering yourself.
Or taking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, these health principles are encoded into the fundamentals of the religion. So when we're talking about Islamic health, we're talking about a religion that has health woven through its practices and recommendations. Now, when we're talking about horse riding, archery, both of those are linked to activities that the Prophet Muhammad pursued and recommended. And so they are also valued as part of Islamic medical tradition. And of course, archery, you think about it, it's an exercise of extreme focus of mind-body coordination. Equestrianism, horse riding,
is my favorite.
There you are. So that, of course, is interacting with an animal. We all know that pet therapy is a thing.
It's a thing for me, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So there's connecting with an animal, but there's also, again, the gross body coordination necessary to stay on a fast-moving animal and command and so on. So these are also mind-body strategies.
I love the way you say that, mind-body strategies. Well, let's take it away from the body just for a minute, Gerry. If you could draw us a map of Islamic practitioners around the world, where would we find them? Only in the Middle East or where?
No, well, of course, Islam has globalized, like Christianity, which is the other sort of Middle Eastern founded religion that has globalized. And so from the Middle East, of course, just across the Gulf, the Arabian Gulf, is India. So Islam first went to India, and the Maharaja of Kerala is reported to have been one of the first converts, and he heard about this and went and saw the Prophet Muhammad and converted and brought this back to India. So we're talking 7th century here. And then, of course, the Indians were great traders. They traded down to Southeast Asia. So Islam went not with the Arab traders initially, but with the Indian traders down to Southeast Asia. So now in Malaysia, in southern Thailand, in southern Philippines, in Indonesia, Islam has been established for almost 1,500 years through that trading link via India. And then, of course, Islam spread from the Arabian Peninsula into its neighbors, into the stans, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and so on, and also Afghanistan and Iran. And there were different branches of Islam that took shape, but still under the broad rubric of Islam. And then there's a strong Arabic presence in North Africa. Of course, you know, the original sort of predominant civilization of Morocco is the Berber tradition.
Right. Right.
But then Arab influences came along, and by cultural influence and also by conquest, Islam became established in North Africa.
Yeah.
And then moved down into particularly West Africa. So there's a strong Islamic presence in West Africa.
Well, I remember when we went to Morocco, we did a post trip and stayed in tents in the desert and all that. But our first stop was for a Berber village, and a family did a tea ceremony for us. And it was the best mint/green tea I've ever had in my life. But when you think of the time to just sit and drink tea together, that has to be adding to longevity, right?
Well, not only that, the tea, of course, does because of the polyphenols. But, you know, for the Japanese doing that, it's meditation. A Japanese tea ceremony is meditation.
Yeah.
It's social connection, but at a very profound, silent, meditative level. So yeah, I was just going to continue your map.
Okay. All right.
So the map, of course, then through the Ottoman Empire from Turkey, which also then embraced Islam, the Ottoman Empire took Islam to Europe. So you have Eastern Europe becoming Islamic, and you still have that in Croatia, Bosnia, and other parts of Eastern Europe. And then Spain from Morocco was Moorish. Moorish means Islamic from Morocco. And that was a mix of Arabic and Berber rule. And what we see in all of this is the spread of Arabic and Islamic medicine, Arabic mathematics, Arabic engineering. You know, the hydrology system in the Alhambra in southern Spain is still a marvel of engineering. So Islamic engineering, Islamic architecture and design, how did they get that dome in Hagia Sophia in Istanbul hundreds and hundreds of years ago, 1,000 years ago, actually, to just stay up there. So
Excellent.
this was geometry, this was calculus, this was engineering, and this is why those Islamic societies were seen as the center of knowledge in the Middle Ages and early Renaissance.
Well, I will tell you that we have to learn. I mean, we have so much to learn. I read where you said we just touched the tip of the iceberg in studying the applications of Islamic tradition, Arabic tradition. That you said we can go from Bahrain to Bolivia and study the effects of it. But once again, for our listeners, what's the difference between Islamic and Arabic medicine? Is there a difference?
Well, just to be crisp and clear about it, Arabic medicine is generally considered the medicine that Avicenna, Ibn Sina, put together in his canon of medicine.
Oh, okay.
And that includes the sort of Greek theory of the four elements, which some medical historians link back to the Ayurvedic theory of five elements. The one missing is akash, or space. And that's because that's generally sort of perceived as religious. And so it's dropped. Buddhists dropped it. In Islam, it's dropped. So you're left with four elements. That's through the Greeks. And all of the local herbal practices and other physical treatments, the pharmacological formulae, that's all in the canon of medicine. That's considered Arabic medicine. Islamic medicine, as we've said, can draw on that, but it's particularly related to the health knowledge contained specifically in the Quran and also the Hadith, the teachings and the sayings of Prophet Muhammad, and is also accompanied by prayer, and which, as we've seen in Islamic tradition, is embedded in health realities as well.
Movement, right?
So, yeah.
So, Gerry, you really have lived a wide life, which means lots of places. But tell us, where were you born and how did you get introduced into the Islamic way of life?
Actually, I was born in Australia, in Perth, Western Australia, but I'm the only member of my family, my five siblings and my parents, to have been born in Australia. And the family for several generations lived in Burma, Myanmar.
Oh, my goodness.
Of European, British and German origin, but also over the generations, some Asian ancestry. So I'm back in Southeast Asia that the family left during the Second World War. Burma was invaded by Japan, and my parents got out. My father walked from Burma into India, a very, very difficult walk. He got my mother on the last boat across the Bay of Bengal from Burma to, from Rangoon to Calcutta. The previous boat had been torpedoed and the women and children were all lost. And she was pregnant and she had a 6-year-old son with her, my older brother, 2 girls in boarding school in Perth in Australia. And eventually, after months of no contact, they were reunited in India and she had her baby there. Then eventually they got to Australia after a couple of years of waiting and were reunited with their 2 daughters, little girls who'd been in boarding school, hadn't seen their parents for 5 years because of the war.
Wow.
And then, to their great surprise, my mother found she was expecting the first Australian in the family.
Would that be you?
So that was me, yeah.
Everyone's a refugee, or in their line, their family line, you'll find a refugee sooner or later when you look. So no one is above another. But what I liked in reading what you wrote is that there's a lot of media myopia. You said they have just one view of Islamic or Arabic sections of the world. But you, on the other hand, have taken your exposure and you've helped places like Four Seasons, Marriott, Mandarin Oriental apply these traditions in their resorts around the world. Would you tell us about one or two of those that you've worked on?
Sure. Well, of course, it's not all Islamic. It's the traditions of where those resorts are. Um, in Four Seasons tented camp at the Thai-Burma-Laos border, the famous Golden Triangle, um, I worked with the wellness director for Four Seasons for Southeast Asia, my dear late friend Brian Hathaway, and the chef and the resort manager and the gardener. And I had the gardener take us for a walk through the sort of semi-forested areas around the resort, asking him, what plant do you local people use for headache? What do you use for skin problem? What do you use for stomachache, et cetera, et cetera? And so through that, we came back with a big basket of herbs. And for the skin ones, I said, now let's crush these up and use some rice flour, which we know the starch is a sugar, which is a skin tightening and skin healing product. Let's mix these skin repair herbs in with coconut oil and rice flour. There's your mask, there's your scrub for the spa. So you don't have to bring in expensive products from Europe in the Golden Triangle. You've got it growing in your grounds, in your garden, in your forests.
And I read where in the first stage of opening up to tourism, people like to try things from like Paris or, Germany or whatever. But the more sophisticated they become, when travelers say, no, I want to feel where I am. So I thought it would be fun to talk about some of those treatments. And I know they apply to where the resorts you've helped design. But I'll just real easily, I have sand now, a picture of sand behind me, not because it matches my shirt, but because I love these are one of the Middle Eastern or what do you call it, traditional Arabic treatments, because they have a lot of sand. So what did they used to do with sand?
Well, first of all, to us, sand is sand is sand. But to people who live in arid zones and either in or on the edge of desert environments, sand is as diverse as the forest is to us.
Wow.
There is sand diversity. And so particularly the women will walk kilometers, miles into a particular area to find the sand they're looking for, and they will have a bath there because that sand is known to have healing and restorative and magnetic properties that they will use. They'll walk over other sand, ignoring it, to get to this specific sand that is known for its healing qualities. So that's local knowledge, really, which we have to listen to in understanding traditions and in focusing science as well. That's local knowledge for what to people who don't live in arid zones is just sand. To them, it's highly nuanced, and they know its therapeutic values, and they know which sand is not so therapeutic. But any sand, burying yourself in it, is going to have a cocooning effect,
Mm-hmm.
You're going to feel swaddled. And swaddling is soothing. So it's going to have that effect. Obviously, you have to keep the head cool and shaded. But that swaddling, all-embracing effect has a very profoundly settling influence. That's one of the benefits.
I read where another one is the musculoskeletal pain, arthritic pain, inflammation.
Yeah.
And what's so funny is you wrote this in 2016, 2015. Now our good friend Sammy Guarini has a beautiful massage table made of sand. It's quartz stones. A lot of people have it now. But when you lay there, you have a cloth on top. Of course, you don't get dirty because it's clean quartz sand. And it is so, when someone, Gerry, pushes on you to massage your sore muscles, it's such a soft recipient, right? And then when they do sound bathing and the reverberation goes through your bones and through the sand, it's otherworldly. Now, there are so many other things Now tell me about superfoods. Gerry, what
Yeah.
are some of the superfoods from?
Well, we've talked about black seed already. Um, so, a very famous um, plant or tree, shrub in the Middle East is the Sidr tree, Sidr. It's the national tree of Qatar. It's found across the Middle East. Interestingly, its botanical name is Sisyphus spina Christi because the legend has it that the crown of thorns placed on Jesus's head was from that tree. It's a very thorny tree. Anything that has lots of thorns, like cactus, like this sidr tree, or also sometimes called the lot tree, Lothe, there's something powerful it's trying to protect.
Wow.
That's a clue. Its defense system is its giveaway. Don't come near me because what I've got is too good. Now there you've got baobab trees, also powerful source of calcium and other nutrients. I take baobab powder in the morning with my juice.
You do?
Sidr tree, the fruits and the leaves are immunomodulatory, anti-inflammatory, and also used for managing heart disease and gastrointestinal disorders.
So you're spelling that Sidra?
No, Sidr, Sidr.
Oh, Sidr. Okay, all right.
It's a phoneticization of the Arabic.
Okay. Now, some other ones are goji berries. We see those everywhere. But the reason I chose the baobab fruit and that tree, I got to see one in Africa, and it was stunning and amazing. And I think bees had their hives in there, and the honeycombs, were scooped out by the tribesmen we were with. But I see how much it's being used in beauty products now. Isn't that right, Gerry?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how sustainable it is, frankly, because these are very slow-growing trees. And it's made from the nuts, of course, the big sort of ostrich egg-sized nuts that they produce, very dry. But, the demand is so great. I'm just wondering whether this is a sustainable supply, and I would have questions about that. But yes, it is. It's everywhere. It's in beauty products, and I put a teaspoonful in my juice every morning. I blend it up.
I think
so. This is another so-called superfood full of the minerals that we need, the basic minerals, iron and zinc and so on. Also protein.
And you predicted that camel's milk would be really big in your 2016 paper, but I don't think it's really hit the shelves here yet. Have you seen it over there?
No, but it is not so much, no. But it's highly valued in the Middle East. It's a very rich source of protein. Again, very high in minerals. And the camel, of course, is a much loved part of Middle Eastern culture. And so the milk fresh from the camel is highly valued. And there are camel dairies now. There are a couple in UAE, and there are some elsewhere in the Middle East. I predict it will grow.
Well, I will tell you, we rode with some Bedouins in Jordan when I went for the Tel Aviv summit, and those camels were like puppies. If you think I'm kidding, it was sunrise. Their snouts were right by our knees, because we were that close. Nobody did anything untowards. They were just sweetie pies because they live there. They're like the dogs of the desert, if you ask me. So this all brings us to this year's summit in Qatar, and the pre and post trip is scheduled to be at this phantasmic resort called Zulal. Tell us what you had to do with that, Gerry.
Well, I worked with GoCo, a spa and wellness development company based in Bangkok and Berlin, and founded and run by my very good and long-term friend Ingo Schrader.
Yes.
And GoCo was awarded a contract by Musharraf Properties, part of the Qatar Foundation, to develop Zulal. And so Ingo brought me in. We had conversations about this. And my team in the Global Initiative for Traditional Systems of Health, Gifts of Health in Oxford, to document the local and regional traditions. In fact, we did for the wellness traditions of the Islamic world. The focus, of course, for Zulal was Arabic and indeed Qatari traditions. But we spent a year and a half researching the literature, having direct conversations with local informants in different countries, compiling it across the Islamic world, drilling deep into Middle Eastern traditions. And that has really provided the content for the programs at Zulal, and I'm very happy that it has seen life. That often in academic research it just stays in the journals and in the books, but in this case it's been translated into real programs, and we're very happy about that.
And to think, Gerry, you've worked on such amazing in the Maldives, in Malaysia, all over. You've worked on resorts that apply these principles in practical ways. But to think that the Global Wellness Summit family has a chance to really experience it firsthand at a brand new, what seems to me to be a groundbreaking resort that caters to families and to, individual travelers. So, because everybody needs the health. And I love that they open it up like that.
Yes. And it's
Gerry,
an award-winning resort already in its early days.
Well, to bring us full circle, we're right back here in Kuala Lumpur.
I have to tell you, Kim, that is the view from my apartment building. So you're sitting in my backyard there.
I seriously am so jealous. I'm just pretending and you have the reality. But we are so grateful to really bend your ear and get some insights on this so little known in the Western world type of healing tradition. And we know we've got a lot to learn. We have to start somewhere. So we thank you for taking the time to hold our hands through an introduction. But Gerry, do you have any parting comments for what do you think are some of the most important things you've learned from this such a deeply rooted healing tradition?
Yes, I think that what I've learned is that these traditions have historically been lived traditions. They haven't, as I said at the beginning, been just medical tradition. They've been lifestyle practices, cultural routines that haven't even been analyzed. They've just been absorbed and lived with. And so the foundations of a healthy, we would say, wellness-oriented lifestyle are embedded in these cultural traditions and practices. And I think that that's something that we can really take home from this, that not just in the Western sort of wellness world of wellness practices is healthy lifestyle practiced, but around the world in cultures, and in our case, for this conversation in the Middle East, there are deeply embedded cultural routines and practices and knowledge that are passed down through families and cultures and elders and experts that guide within culture the ways for healthy living. And of course, everywhere in the 20th and 21st century, people have moved away from these into a more westernized lifestyle, but they're there for people to go back to. And part of us bringing them together was to begin to make it available for people in the region to draw on their own traditions to create and maintain a healthy lifestyle for a long life that is well lived.
Well, we all need that. And I'm telling you, Gerry, the next time I reach for turmeric or smell my frankincense essential oil, I'm going to think of our conversation. I don't know about the next time I drink camel's milk, but thank you for sharing with us today, Gerry. We really appreciate it.
All right, Kim, a great pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.